Jo Pil-ho is a police officer in South Korea. Since joining the police force, he is gradually consumed by a corrupt society, where the oppression of the plutocrats makes him lose his faith in justice. He begins to accept bribes and corruption, believing that since society is hopeless, he was not required to do his duty as a police officer. One day, Jo Pil-ho catches a thief, Chi-chul, but instead of bringing him to justice, he takes him under his wing and uses Chul's stealing skills to gain ill-gotten gains for himself. Late at night in Seoul, Chi-chul steals from a bank, first chiseling through the walls, then cutting the alarm wires of the safe and taking all the cash inside. The money is secreted in Jo Pil-ho's police car, and since it's a police car, any inspection won't be suspicious. In this way, they hid the money and accumulated a large amount of wealth. However, the money was still not enough to satisfy their appetite. Jo Pil-ho had his eye on a rotten building, and he joined forces with local gangster Siu Suk to buy the building at a low price, and then get it reopened through his network of connections. Regardless of whether the rotten building is qualified or not, as long as it is renovated and certified, it can be sold at a high price. He's about to make a fortune, but with his superiors investigating the buildings, Jo Pil-ho has to get rid of the properties before anything happens to them, and he also needs to fill out his bank accounts in order to cover up the flow of the illegal money. At this point, Pil-ho needs $200,000, and he only has $50,000 on hand. He decides to take the risk and infiltrate the police station's warehouse, which is stacked with contraband worth a lot of money. Jo Pil-ho and Chi-chul join forces with Si Seok and others, planning that Si Seok's men will cut the alarm wires of the warehouse, and then Chi-chul will go in and steal the valuables. The plan seems perfect, but Si Seok's man is colorblind and mistakenly cuts both wires, leading to a shocking explosion at the warehouse. The explosion instantly turns the warehouse into a sea of flames. Chi-chul dies in the blast, and Jo Pil-ho is knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, Jo Pil-ho is already lying in the hospital, facing the police chief's questioning. He falsely claims that he entered the warehouse after noticing something unusual during his patrol, but he unexpectedly encountered the explosion. The police department can't find any evidence and can only release him temporarily in order to cover up the traces of his crime. Jo Pil-ho immediately destroys the records of his contact with Si Seok, but Chi-chul's cell phone becomes a big problem for him. Jo Pil-ho hears that the police only found keys, not a cell phone, next to Chi-chul's body. In order to find evidence that might expose his crime, he goes to Cho's house and opens the safe, only to find that the $50,000 he had previously stored has disappeared. Surveillance has revealed that Jo Pil-ho finds out that Chi-chul's girlfriend, Sunmi, was once there. Sunmi grew up as an orphan and has been living in pain since her best friend Song-gil was killed in a shipwreck 14 years ago. Meanwhile, the police discover a bigger conspiracy behind the warehouse explosion. Prosecutor Ji-woo learns that the warehouse contained evidence of the finance minister's investment of $700 million. Ji-woo wanted to defeat the finance minister with this evidence, but now everything has turned to ashes. To make matters worse, Taiju, an assassin hired by the finance minister, also showed up at the warehouse that night to burn the evidence, and Taiju killed Chi-chul, who wasn't killed by the bombing. Jo Pil-ho realizes that Chi-chul's cell phone may have a key video hidden in it that could expose the finance minister's crimes. He finds Sunmi and hopes to find the cell phone and video through her. Sunmi tells Jo Pil-ho that Chi-chul did receive a strange video before he died, but she only cared about the money. As the two argue, the car loses control and crashes into a curb, and Sunmi takes advantage of the situation to escape. Meanwhile, Ji-woo discovers that the police have a video showing Jo Pil-ho and Chi-chul together and suspects that he's the one responsible for the murder and arson. And Jo Pil-ho is momentarily at a loss for words. Ji-woo finds Jo Pil-ho and hopes to work with him as the only evidence left to put the Minister of Finance in jail as the video. Jo Pil-ho agrees to cooperate, finds Sunmi, and gives the video to Ji-woo. To make a deal, Ji-woo helps Jo Pil-ho clear his name, while Jo Pil-ho cooperates with Ji-woo in gathering evidence. However, just as they find Sunmi, they are ambushed by the assassin Taiju, and Jo Pil-ho does his best to save Sunmi. Jo Pil-ho gives a copy of the video to Ji-woo, who asks Sunmi to testify as a tainted witness. To Jo Pil-ho's surprise, Ji-woo had already switched sides with the Minister of Finance, and he devises a trap to use Sunmi to lure Jo Pil-ho out. On the rooftop, Taiju threatens Jo Pil-ho to hand over the original video or kill Sunmi Desperate, Sunmi chooses to jump from the rooftop. She has no more attachments to the world. A grief-stricken Joe Pilho decides to take revenge and breaks into the finance minister's clubhouse, where he fights Taiju to the death. In the end, Joe Pilho snatches back his gun at the critical moment, kills Taiju, and rushes into the meeting place, shooting the finance minister in front of everyone. The crimes of the Zaibatsu were completely exposed, and all those involved were caught. Joe Pilho is arrested and imprisoned, but he finally rediscovers justice as a police officer in the depths of corruption. The story ends with Joe Pilho's confession that he has served justice to an innocent girl and redeemed his last conscience. Even at the cost of his freedom, he still brings a ray of light to this dark world.